My girlfriend and I met in what seemed like the most perfect way, fishing. It was 8 years ago, but honestly, I can still picture it like it happened just yesterday. We both turned up at this quiet, out-of-the-way fishing spot early in the morning. The sun had barely risen, casting this soft golden light over the water. There was a stillness to the air, the kind you only really get in those early hours when the world hasn't fully woken up yet. I remember glancing over and seeing her, just a few yards down from where I'd set up, expertly baiting her hook. We exchanged a quick smile, a nod, the kind of silent acknowledgement you give another angler when you're both out there for the same reason, just to fish. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was there to fish, she was there to fish, and that was that. But something felt different that morning. Maybe it was the way the breeze moved through the trees, or maybe it was just fate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening, even though I didn't know it yet. As the hours passed, we kept stealing glances at each other. Eventually, one of us hooked a decent-sized fish, I can't remember if it was her or me, and it broke the ice. We ended up chatting, sharing tips about bait and lures, laughing about past fishing fails. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other for years, even though we'd only just met. From that day on, fishing became our thing. It wasn't just a hobby we shared, it became the core of our relationship, the thing that tied us together. Over the years, we made it our mission to explore as many fishing spots as we could. North America, South America, we traveled all over. Some places were breathtaking, with pristine lakes or rugged coastlines, while others were nothing more than muddy ponds that locals swore held monster fish. But no matter where we went, the outcome didn't really matter. Sure, there were days when we'd reel in an incredible catch and days where we'd get nothing but a few nibbles, but that wasn't what it was about. What made every trip special was the fact that we were doing it together. It was about the quiet moments on the water, the sound of the line whizzing through the air, and the comfortable silence we shared when nothing needed to be said. Fishing wasn't just a pastime for us, it became a symbol of our connection. It was our ritual, our sanctuary. Every trip, every cast, every sunrise we watched together, it was all part of what made us us. No one else could touch that. We made a great team, no doubt about it, but there was always this lighthearted, competitive edge to our fishing trips. Even though we were partners in everything we did, the spirit of competition never really left us when it came to fishing. It's funny looking back on it now, she had her own special techniques, her go-to gear, and I had mine. We each swore by our own methods, convinced we knew best. She'd meticulously select her bait, taking her time to perfect every detail, while I had my own rhythm, always believing I had the edge. It became a kind of ritual for us, that playful rivalry. Whenever one of us landed a good catch, the other couldn't help but throw in a playful jab. If she caught something bigger than me, she'd flash that triumphant smile of hers and say, "Maybe you need to change up your bait," as if she had the ultimate secret to fishing success. And, of course, when I managed to reel in a bigger one, I'd tease her right back, asking if she'd forgotten how to cast properly or suggesting that her technique might need a little work. It was never serious, just fun, light banter that added another layer to our connection. I think that's what kept our trips exciting. Even on the days when the fish weren't biting, we'd keep ourselves entertained with that back and forth. We'd poke fun at each other's lucky spots or blame the weather when things didn't go as planned. And when the fishing was bad for both of us, we'd laugh it off, saying the fish just weren't ready for our level of skill that day. It was like a little game we played, a game that always made those long hours on the water fly by. But beneath all that teasing, there was this unspoken understanding. No matter how much we ribbed each other, I always felt her support. There was something about her confidence, the way she'd stand by my side while also challenging me in a way that kept me on my toes. We were competitive, sure, but it never got mean or serious. It only made our bond stronger. The competition made the victories sweeter, but the losses didn't sting because, at the end of the day, we were a team. We always came back to each other. That's why, when everything came crashing down, it blindsided me. The fun, the competition, the banter, it all felt so real and solid. I thought we were untouchable, that nothing could break what we had. I couldn't have been more wrong. One evening, as we were packing up for another fishing trip, something happened that changed everything between us. It was supposed to be just like any other night, checking our gear, making sure everything was in order for the next day on the water. I wasn't really thinking much of it, just in my usual routine, grabbing my rods and making sure the tackle box was packed. As I reached over to her stuff, I noticed her gearbox sitting slightly ajar, which wasn't like her. She was usually meticulous about organizing her things, so it caught my eye. Without thinking, I nudged it open a little more. At first, it looked like her usual setup: rods, lures, a few spools of line. But then, something strange caught my attention. There, nestled among her fishing gear, was something that definitely didn't belong. I blinked, not sure I was seeing it right at first. It wasn't bait, not even some new kind of fishing tool I hadn't seen before. It was a rubber vibrating toy. That kind of toy. The kind you definitely don't use for fishing. I froze for a second, completely blindsided. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Why was that in her gear? What did it even mean? I wasn't snooping, wasn't looking for any hidden secrets, but there it was, right in front of me. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just tired and seeing things that weren't really there. But no, it was sitting there, clear as day. I stood there, stunned, as a wave of confusion and disbelief hit me. On the outside, I tried to stay calm, keep it together like nothing had happened. But on the inside, my head was spinning. We'd always had an intimate, passionate relationship. I thought we were connected in every way that mattered, especially physically. I'd never once questioned our chemistry or thought she needed more than what we had. But now, standing there, staring at this thing, I couldn't help but wonder, what was I missing? Was I not enough for her? I didn't say anything in that moment. Maybe it was denial, or maybe I just didn't know how to confront it right away. But inside, I felt a sinking feeling. That toy wasn't just some random thing, it was a sign that something was off, something I hadn't seen coming. I had no idea then just how deep the betrayal went, but in that moment, I knew everything had changed. And it was only going to get worse. Not long after that unsettling discovery, the real truth hit me like a punch in the gut, harder than I ever could have imagined. That special bait wasn't something she had casually picked up for herself. No, it was a gift. And not just from anyone, it was from someone I knew well. It came from one of my own fishing buddies, a guy I'd spent countless hours with on the water, someone I considered a colleague and, worse, a friend. The realization knocked the wind out of me. He'd been pursuing her behind my back. The whole time I thought we were all just friends. I never suspected a thing. I remember the moment it all came out. He'd apparently given her that toy, telling her it was to brighten up her evenings while I was away on fishing trips. Like it was some kind of innocent, thoughtful gift. What a sick joke. The betrayal stung so deeply because I trusted him. I trusted her. I mean, this was someone I had swapped fishing stories with, someone I had cast lines alongside. I never would have thought in a million years that he was secretly trying to worm his way into my relationship, right under my nose. The more I thought about it, the more everything we had together started to feel tainted. All those years, every memory we shared, it suddenly felt like a lie. It was like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Every fishing trip, every laugh we shared, every sunset we watched together while waiting for a bite, it all felt poisoned now. How long had this been going on? How much of what I thought we had was real? I kept replaying the past in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong, trying to find the moment when it all started to fall apart. But the more I thought about it, the more the memories felt distorted, like they were crumbling under the weight of the truth. I thought we were solid, that nothing could touch what we had. I thought she was my partner, my equal in every way. Now I wasn't even sure if I knew her at all. That revelation shattered everything I believed about us. In that moment, I wasn't just losing her, I was losing everything I thought we had built together. All the trust, the connection, the history, it was all slipping through my fingers. My whole world had shifted in an instant, and there was no going back. That night was the last time I spent with her. After the discovery, everything felt surreal, like I was stuck in a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. We still had our fishing trip planned for the next morning, but there was no way I could pretend things were normal. The betrayal hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating, even though neither of us had acknowledged it yet. She went about her usual routine, packing her gear, checking her rods, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just found out that she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I didn't say much that night, but I didn't need to. My silence was enough to tell her that I knew, and in a way, that hurt more than any confrontation. There were no angry words or accusations, no dramatic showdown. The trust between us had already been shattered beyond repair. I wasn't going to fight for someone who'd chosen to betray me so deeply. I could see it in her eyes, though. She knew it was over. There was no point in denying it anymore. We sat together for what felt like hours, but there was nothing left to say. The air that once crackled with playful competition and quiet affection now felt cold and distant. I stared at her, trying to understand how the woman I thought I knew, the one I'd shared so many memories with, so many adventures, could have done something like this. But I couldn't. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and the life I thought we had was a lie. As the night stretched on, I made my decision. I wasn't going to drag this out, wasn't going to let the betrayal fester any longer. She had made her choice, and I wasn't going to stick around to watch her play games with someone else. If she wanted him, my so-called friend, then she could have him. I wasn't going to stand in her way. I deserved better than this, and I knew it. So, I packed up my gear, grabbed my keys, and without a word, I walked out of that house for the last time. I could hear her calling after me as I closed the door behind me, but it didn't matter. Her words were meaningless now. I wasn't turning back, wasn't giving her another chance to explain or make excuses. The line had been cut, and I was done. Let her chase after someone else, let someone else take the bait next time. I had spent years believing in us, but now I realized I'd been fishing in shallow waters. There was nothing left for me here. As I drove away that night, the quiet hum of the engine and the open road ahead of me felt like freedom. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't looking back. The life we'd built, the memories we'd shared, the future I thought we had, it was all gone, like a catch that slips off the line just as you're about to reel it in. But instead of regret, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over, and I was free. I had no idea what the future held for me, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel weighed down by the past. I would find my way, one cast at a time. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally catch something worth holding on to,